Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Mode Bespoke, and happy 2019. We took a 2-week break so we can spend the holidays with family traveling around, because we now live in the Pacific Northwest and my family lives in the Southwest, and my husband's family does too. So we did a lot of family visiting over the holidays, and we are happy to be back because I've got a whole bunch of great new projects for you. We've got men's and women's projects this year, and 2019 is going to be a fantastic year for everybody who crochets. I wish I could knit too, and then I could show you how to do a whole bunch of knit projects, but maybe I'll take that on as my 2019 New Year's resolution. I don't know. But today's project is a baby blanket. Thought we would ease into 2019 with something that all of our beginners could complete, as well as all of our experienced crocheters. And it is a striped baby blanket in cotton. So I used 2 different color cottons. This one is described as gray. I see it more as a green than a gray, but if you order it, I'll put all the information in the description box below to where you can get this yarn. It is a cotton yarn, and I used 2 skeins. I didn't use the entire skein, so I had 4 stripes of the ecru. Is it ecru? If somebody could tell me how to pronounce that, that would be great. I'm not sure you pronounce it. And then this one, which is supposed to be gray. So we had 4 stripes of that one and 5 stripes of gray. So we had a lot of the lighter yarn left over. So I'm going to show you how to make a couple of baby bibs with that, but that's coming up in a couple of tutorials from now. But you will have a little yarn left over. It is a nice big blanket. It's about 30, it's approximately 30 by 30. So it's a little bit bigger on one side, but they're both roughly the same. One's a little over 30, one's just under 30, one of the sides. So it is a very breathable and lightweight blanket, and it's crocheted, I think I've told you, in a moss stitch. So anyone at any level of crochet will be able to complete this project pretty quickly. So I'm going to go ahead and just let's get started. So the materials I'm going to be using for this blanket are 2 skeins of Sprightly cotton yarn, and this is a cotton worsted yarn. It is 100% cotton, and I got this from a website called craftsy.com. I will put the link to their website down in the description box below. If you can't find this yarn, it is a size 4 worsted yarn. It is 525 yards or 480 meters. Weighs 300 grams or 10.5 ounces. We are also going to be using a J size hook, and that is a 6mm hook, pair of scissors, a yarn and or tapestry needle, whatever you prefer, and a measuring tape. So to get started, I'm going to use the 2 colors that I chose, at least, are gray, and this is the one I have trouble with, ecru. It's like a beige. The gray does look a little green. I think I've told you this before. So if I call it green, don't be surprised. I see it as green. So we're just going to start with a long strand of this yarn. We're going to use really loose tension throughout the entire work. And we're going to begin with a slip knot. So wrap the yarn around your 2 fingers. And then you're going to insert your hook into the loop. Grab some yarn, pull it through the loop. And now we just have to tighten our knot, so grab the 2 ends of yarn and tighten them up. So that is our slip knot, and we're going to begin with a chain of 120 stitches. So if the folks who don't know how to chain, pinch the bottom knot, and we're just going to lay the yarn over our index finger, like so, and just grab yarn and pull it through the loop. So wrap yarn, pull through the loop, wrap yarn, pull through the loop. So like I said, you need 120 stitches. Make sure you leave a nice and loose tension throughout your entire work though, so that it'll be a nice and lighter blanket, and it'll be as wide as we want it to be. So I've made my chain, so here are all 120 stitches of this. We're going to need to make 1 more chain, so we're going to have 121, but this is the beginning of our 2nd row, or I guess our 1st row technically. So start with a chain 1 and then go into the 2nd stitch from your hook. you're going to make a single crochet. So I'll make this first one really quick, and I will slow down, I promise, for anybody who needs to see how to make a single crochet. So I'm going to go into the second stitch, and if you don't know how to make a single crochet, you're going to insert your hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull back through the stitch, and now you're going to have 2 loops on your hook. So yarn over, and you're going to pull through both loops. So we're going to go into the next stitch and do the same. Insert your hook, yarn over, pull back through the loop, yarn over, and pull through the 2 loops on your hook. So make a single crochet in every stitch of the chain. So you're going to end up with 120 single crochets. So I will finish this and see you here in a moment. So I've made my first row, and that was all single crochets in every stitch, and we're ready to move on to our second row. So we're just going to grab our yarn again, and we're going to make a chain 1, and this is how we're going to start every single row. So chain 1 and turn your work around. So for this next row, we're going to go into this next stitch. So the stitches are these little spaces up here up top. So there's one stitch and another one, not these bottom ones, the top ones. So go into that top stitch, insert your hook, and make a single crochet. So we're going to insert our hook into the stitch, yarn over, pull through the stitch, yarn over, and pull through our 2 loops for our first single crochet. And now we're going to chain 1. So we made our chain. We are going to skip the next stitch, and we're going to go into the third stitch. So insert your hook into the third stitch, which is this little guy right here. So insert the hook, yarn over, pull back out through the stitch, and now we have our 2 loops on the hook, so we're going to yarn over and pull through both loops. So chain 1, we're going to skip a stitch, and we're going to make another single crochet. Sorry if you hear somebody crunching in the background, that's my little one. She wanted to come eat cereal while I was sitting here doing my voiceover, so I'm sorry if you hear her. Alright, so we've got our single crochet. Let me just get this closed up, and we go to the next one. So chain 1, skip a stitch, go into the stitch after that, and make a single crochet. And we're just going to keep working this way until we get to the end of the row. So make a single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, and then repeat. Single crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch. So I'll see you here when we've got the last couple of stitches of the row, so I can show you how to finish the row. So I'm at my last 3 stitches of the row, and we're going to skip the stitch because I've already made my chain 1. So now I just have to make my single crochet. So I've got my single crochet, and now I have my very last stitch of the row, and it's this little guy right here, and sometimes it's kind of hidden, and sometimes it's a lot easier to see. But if you have trouble seeing it, just insert your hook somewhere into this last stitch area, and that way you can close off your first row. So I'm just going to insert my hook in here if I can actually make it happen. There we go. So make sure you go all the way through and get at least 2 of the stitches there so that it'll be a nice clean edge. So I'll make my single crochet. So as you notice, the last 2 stitches of the row are single crochets. There's no chain in between them. So now we can go into our second row. So we're going to chain 1, and this is the row we're going to repeat over and over again. So pay close attention. So we're going to insert our hook into our first stitch of the row, and it is going to be a single crochet. So we'll make our first single crochet, and we're going to chain 1, and we're going to skip this next stitch. So it's always going to look the same at the beginning of every row. So skip that first little stitch and go into this gap space. And this is the space that we made when we made our skip stitch and chain 1. This is what it looks like. So we're just going to go all the way through. and we're going to make a single crochet into this stitch. So you'll make a single crochet into every one of these stitches for the rest of the row. So here's our single crochet, chain 1, and we're going to skip the stitch right next to it, which is this one right here, and go into the gap space. So go into this little gap, insert your hook, and make a single crochet. So now you don't have to sit there and count the stitch, make sure that you skipped one. Just go into every one of the gap spaces is where you get a single crochet. So we chain 1, skip this, go into the gap space, and make a single crochet. So here's my single crochet. And then we chain 1 and continue. So it's always chain 1, skip a stitch, go into the gap space, single crochet. Chain 1, go into the next gap space, and single crochet. Do this until you get to the end of the row. I'll show you how to finish the row here in just a moment. So I'm at the end of the row, and I've got this little gap space right here and my last stitch of the row. So I've already made my chain 1, so I'm just going to make my single crochet in the gap space. And I will not chain another one, so just go straight into the next stitch and make your single crochet. So it's 2 single crochets in a row, and that will give you a very nice defined edge. So there's how our row looks. Let's begin our next row, and it's just going to be a repetition of this row that we just finished. So chain 1, turn your work around, and we're going to go into this very first stitch and make a single crochet. So yarn over and pull through my 2 stitches. Alright, and we're going to chain 1, and this little stitch is going to be the same one. So this is the first skip stitch, so that's why we have our 2 single crochets in a row from the previous row. You're always going to skip that one and go straight into this gap space. So we're going to crochet into this gap space for every single one of our single crochets from here through the rest of this project. And that's what's going to create the moss stitch. So skip the single crochet, which is that one, and go into the gap space. So we're just going to repeat the same thing that we did in the previous row, and that's the chain 1, single crochet and gap space, chain 1, single crochet and gap space. Don't forget that at the end of the row you need 2 single crochets next to each other. That'll finish off your row. You're going to make a total of 10 rows in green. So I'll let you do that, and I'm going to continue crocheting here. So we're on row number 4 right now. Make 6 more rows in this green-gray color, and I will see you here in a bit. Alright, so I've made my 10 rows in green, and now it's time to switch to the beige. I'm just going to call it beige or off-white. Anything but the color it's supposed to be, because I still don't know how to pronounce that. So to do this, we're just going to leave a long tail of yarn so that we can weave it in later. Remember to leave the long tail so that you can knot it and hide it as you need to, so that it won't unravel your blanket later and any time that you wash it. So just loop the yarn over your hook, and you're just going to pass your hook through the loop that you already had on there. So like so. We're just going to tighten the green and tighten this light color, and we're going to use both threads on our finger, and this is so that we make our first chain and it'll tighten our color change. So I'll use both of the strands of yarn, and I'm just going to make a chain. So I'll chain 1 with both threads, and then I'll remove the thread I'm not going to be working with, which is this long tail. Go to the thread that we are using and chain 1 more, and that's going to begin our new row. So because we chained 2 in this initial row, you're just going to need to make a slip stitch in this first stitch, and this is just the row that you switch color in. Every other time you start with a chain 1 and then a single crochet, but if we do that now that we switch color and we chain 2, it's going to make the edge really bulky on all of your color change. And we're going to be changing colors a bit. So, alright, so we made our slip stitch, and now we chain 1, and we're going to keep working the same way we've been working all of our other rows. So we're going to go into the gap space and single crochet, chain 1, skip to the gap space, single crochet, and then we chain one. And see, now that we have a couple of stitches, I'm going to go through and cut the green yarn. And that way I won't get tangled in all of my yarn. So I'll leave a nice long tail, cut the green, and I can keep moving. So I'll go back to stitching my beige. So here we're at the gap space, so we'll make our single crochet. And then we chain one, go to the gap space, make a single crochet, and so forth. So it's just a repetition of that third row. If you still are not quite sure how to do that row, just go back and watch that section of the video over again, because it's the same row we're going to repeat throughout the entire blanket. So in this beige, I'm going to make 2 rows. So I'll finish this one, go back and make 1 more row, and then we're going to switch to the green. So this is what it starts to look like. So I'll finish this row, do 1 more, and I will see you when I switch colors again to the green so that I can show you how to switch colors 1 more time. Alright, so I finished my 2 rows in Ecru. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. So we're going to loop our green yarn over our hook, and we're just going to loop it, or pull it through the loop that we already had. Let's get everything tightened up. We're going to have our 2 threads, and we're going to chain 1. We're going to drop the thread we're not using, go to our working yarn, and we're going to chain 1 more. So it's this one that's attached to the yarn, or to the skein. So chain 1. And we're going to turn our work around, and like we do in the row that we switch color in, we're going to start with a slip stitch, not with a chain, or not with a single crochet. So start with a slip stitch. So I'll go into my first stitch, insert my hook, yarn over, and pull it through the loop. So I've pulled it through one, and that way it won't bunch up our edges. So we're going to chain 1, go into our first little gap space, so skip this stitch, go into this next one, and we're going to make a single crochet. So there we go. And then chain 1, go into this next space and single crochet, chain 1, go into the next space, single crochet, chain 1, and I'm going to keep working the rest of this row. So with this green one, now that we switch colors, I'm just going to make 1 row of green. So the way this pattern works is it's just a repetition of blocks. So the first block is 10 stitches in like the green, and then we did the 2 rows, or not 10 stitches, 10 rows in green, 2 rows in beige, and then 1 row in green. So for those that need to see it a little bit better, it's 10 rows in your first color. So then we're going to do 2 rows in our second color, which are these 2 rows right here. And we're going to go back into 1 last row in our first color. And this is going to give us nice, clean, crisp color changes for our stripes. Then we repeat again. So now we repeat it in the beige, and we're going to do 10 rows of the beige, 2 rows of green, 1 row of beige, and then we switch back to green. So I'm going to keep making the rest of my rows. I will see you here once I've finished everything, and that way I can show you what it looks like. So now that I have repeated all of my rows, and I've completed all my repetitions, I should say, this is what I ended up with. It's going to be 5 of these big green stripes, so it's 5 of the green repetitions, and then 4 in ecru. And it's going to give you a total of just over 30 inches worth of length for this blanket, and you're going to be just shy of 30 inches across. So it's going to be slightly rectangular, but it'll still be a really nice, big, comfortable baby blanket. So now that we have finished all of these rows, we do have to make our ends match. So just like you begin the first row with a row of single crochets, so here's our initial one, it's a row of single crochets, so we have to finish this blanket also with a row of single crochets. So to do that, let's go back to where we ended up, and we're going to start with a chain 1. So now we're going to turn our work around. And we're going to make a single crochet in every single one of the stitches in this row. So we're not going to skip anything, we're not going to make any chain ones, just straight single crochet. So go into your very first stitch, and we're going to grab some yarn, and we yarn over and pull through our 2 loops for our single crochet. Go into this very next stitch, which we have been skipping in previous rows. You're going to work a single crochet into that stitch. So I'll finish this one. Go into the little gap space right over here. That's going to be another single crochet. Go into the next stitch and it's going to be another single crochet. And in the next gap space, you guessed it, another single crochet. So just keep making a single crochet in every single one of the stitches of this row. I'll see you when we are done. I think I'll catch up with you on the very last stitch, and then we'll get to finishing this off. I'll show you how to weave in your ends and you'll be done with this blanket. So if you know how to do that, go ahead and just finish off the blanket, weave in your ends, and you are done. And if not, we're going to be making the last stitch here, and I'll show you how to get those ends woven in. So leave a nice long tail. So I get this cut right here. We're just going to pull our hook out with the yarn. So just pull everything through, and this is where you're going to need your yarn or tapestry needle, whatever you prefer. Just make sure that it is a needle that you can fit your yarn through, so it can be any kind of needle. So let's get this all threaded in, and this is the way you're going to weave in all of your threads. It gets a little more complicated when you have just a single row, but practice a little bit with the big ones and you'll be a lot more comfortable weaving in your ends. So typically what I do is I'm just going to make a knot here at the end to get this all nice and tightened. And I'm just going to weave in my ends in a square shape. So I'm just going to pick a direction and just go with it. So insert the needle and just go in a couple of stitches. And then I'm going to switch directions and just sew downward. And I'll switch directions again and go back to the left. So in the rows that I have just the one row of a color, I do this but on a very small scale. So it's just a very tiny square, and then I do a square next to that and a square next to that. So if you have a lot more yarn left, just continue weaving in your ends in a square form. If you don't, just go ahead and tuck in that last bit of the tail and you are done. So go through, weave in all of your ends. I will go ahead and do the same, and then I'll show you what our blanket's going to look like once it's all finished. And there we go, friends. We have finished our baby blanket. If you have any questions or any comments, please be sure to leave them down in the comments below. I do try to get to all of your questions and comments, so if you have them, leave them, I'll answer them. Give the video a thumbs up if you've enjoyed this video. It means a lot to me to see when people like these videos, as it tells me what kind of stuff you guys like to see. Don't forget to subscribe. I do put videos out every Thursday, so if you want to learn to crochet and you want to get notifications, go ahead and hit the little bell and subscribe to the channel. For the patterns for any of these projects, some of them are free and some of them are for purchase, but you can find them all on my blog, and that is modebespoke.blogspot.com. The link will be down in the description box below. You can also follow me on Instagram. I am at mode.bespoke. Thanks for watching.